For most of my life, my parents had a phrase they loved to repeat whenever relatives visited, whenever someone asked about their children, whenever the topic of success came up. They would smile and say, "Our daughter Emma is the successful one." And then they would gesture toward my sister, Emma. Perfect grades, perfect job title, perfect story. Meanwhile, I would be sitting quietly at the same table, invisible. If someone asked about me, the explanation was always vague. "Oh, he does something with computers." Or sometimes, "He's still figuring things out," which was funny because by the time they started saying that, I had already built a company. But in my family, success was measured differently. Emma had the things that looked impressive at dinner parties: a high-paying consulting job, designer clothes, photos from expensive restaurants, and my parents loved telling people about it. They would scroll through pictures on their phones. This was in Paris. This was in Milan. This was her team retreat in Switzerland. Meanwhile, when my name came up, the conversation usually ended quickly. My mother would say, "He prefers to work quietly," which was her polite way of saying, "We're not entirely sure what he does." And to be fair, I never corrected them, not once, because explaining complex things to people who already believe they understand the world is exhausting. My sister, however, enjoyed the attention. At family gatherings, she would talk about clients, about bonuses, about promotions, and my parents would sit there glowing with pride. Sometimes she would look at me and smile in that polite, slightly condescending way. "You should really think bigger," she once told me. "You're smart enough. You just lack ambition." I nodded, not because she was right, but because arguing would have changed nothing. The truth was much simpler. While Emma had been building a career, I had been building systems, software systems, quiet ones, invisible ones, the kind that power entire businesses without anyone noticing. For years I worked alone, late nights, empty offices, cold coffee. There were months where nothing worked. Servers crashed, clients disappeared, investors said no, but slowly things started working. One client became 5, 5 became 50. And eventually the company grew large enough that another firm made an offer, a very large offer. I signed the papers 6 months before the family dinner where everything changed. The acquisition number was bigger than anything my family had ever seen. But I didn't tell them, because by that point, I had already learned something important. People reveal their true opinions long before the truth arrives, and I wanted to hear those opinions clearly. The dinner happened on a Sunday evening. My parents had invited relatives over: my uncle, my aunt, 2 cousins, and of course Emma. Dinner conversations in our family followed a predictable pattern: small talk, complaints about politics, then eventually career updates. My mother started it. "So Emma just received another promotion." Everyone turned toward my sister. Emma smiled modestly. "It's nothing huge, just senior partner track." My father added proudly, "She's always been the driven one." My uncle nodded. "That's real success." Then someone asked the question that always came next. "What about your other child?" My mother glanced at me. "Well, he's doing something in tech." The room went quiet for a moment. Then my cousin asked, "So is it like freelance work?" Emma laughed softly. "He's always preferred small projects." I remember looking around the table. Everyone seemed comfortable with that explanation, so I let it stand until my father decided to finish the comparison. "You see," he said, raising his glass slightly, Emma is the successful one. And that sentence would have ended the conversation if my uncle hadn't asked one simple question. How much do consultants like Emma actually make? Emma answered confidently. With bonuses, around $300,000 a year. The room reacted with impressed murmurs. My parents looked proud, very proud. Then my uncle asked another question. What about the tech business? My father shrugged. I doubt it's anything close to that. And that was the moment something interesting happened. My cousin, who had been quiet most of the night, pulled out his phone. Wait, he said slowly. I think I read about a company acquisition recently. He looked at me. What was the name of your company again? I hesitated, but avoiding the answer now would have been pointless, so I told him. The room went silent as he searched. Then his eyebrows lifted. Hold on. He turned the phone so everyone could see the article headline. My company name, acquired. For a number that made Emma's salary look microscopic, he started reading aloud. Total acquisition value. The number echoed across the dining room. For a moment, nobody moved. My mother blinked. My father leaned closer to the screen. Emma's smile faded. Then my cousin continued reading. Founder and lead architect. And he looked up. That's you. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever experienced at that table. My uncle cleared his throat. My father looked confused. Emma stared at me like she had just realized she had misunderstood the entire story. Finally, my mother asked the only question she could think of. Why didn't you tell us? I thought about that, about every dinner, every comment, every quiet assumption. Then I answered honestly, because you never asked. No anger, no accusation, just the truth. Emma looked down at the table. My father slowly sat back in his chair. For years they had been certain they understood the story. Who was successful, who wasn't. But the numbers had a way of changing narratives. Later that night, as everyone was leaving, my uncle stopped me at the door. He smiled slightly. You know, he said, success is funny. I asked what he meant. He nodded toward the dining room where my parents were still processing everything. Sometimes the quiet one is just waiting for the right moment. I watched my family through the doorway. For the first time in my life, they didn't seem entirely sure who they were talking about when they said the word successful. And the strangest part? The numbers hadn't changed who I was. They had only revealed who had been paying attention and who hadn't. Because sometimes success doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it waits quietly until someone reads the numbers out loud.